Prime Minister Modi will arrive in Brunei's capital today, kicking off a significant two-nation tour this week. Following his visit to Brunei, our Prime Minister will head to Singapore tomorrow, but in Brunei, he's set to meet with Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah, the world's longest-serving monarch, who has been in power since 1967. Now, during this visit, India and Brunei will also sign a new memorandum of understanding on space cooperation, building on the 2018 agreement on satellite tracking. As far as the agenda for Singapore is concerned, our Prime Minister will meet the new Prime Minister Lawrence Wong there, who was sworn in May this year, and the two leaders will witness the signing of 4 agreements on semiconductors, digital cooperation, healthcare as well as skilling. Singapore, by the way, is India's largest trade partner in ASEAN, and the country is the leading source of foreign direct investment as well. But a little context for you here. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh actually visited Brunei in 2013 to attend the ASEAN-India Summit and East Asia Summit. And Vice President Hamid Ansari's visit in 2016 saw many MOUs signed. However, Prime Minister Modi is the first Indian Prime Minister to make a bilateral visit there. Here's what the Ministry of External Affairs said regarding his plan of action.
On hydrocarbons, we have been importing hydrocarbons from Brunei, and in the long run, we would like to have more predictable supplies, with longer-term contracts from Brunei, especially in the area of gas, in which we see that India's demand for natural gas will increase many times in the near future. So that is an opportunity for the Brunei side to lock in long-term gas supply arrangements if they wish to do so. We have ongoing cooperation with Brunei, as I mentioned, in telemetry, tracking and command. And we will take this forward as technology develops, as our requirements develop. So also the need for enhancing those capabilities in the various centers we have worldwide for our telemetry, tracking and command increase or change. So you will see that. I don't want to jump the gun here, but you will see some discussion and outcomes from that as well.
Mohammad Ghazali is tracking the details of this two-nation tour very closely. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, this visit to the two ASEAN member countries is a contrast in many ways also, right? Although India has had historically close ties with both Brunei and Singapore that were once under British occupation.
Yes, certainly. And why this is interesting, Parma, because if you see the kind of foreign policy we are practicing in Modi 3.0 or the Indian government is practicing, you will see there is a larger focus on the immediate neighborhood, or to say that what kind of relations we are fostering in our South Asian region. So if you see Prime Minister, the External Affairs Minister, say in this third term since July, have been meeting around leaders in the immediate neighborhood, be it Bangladesh, before the entire debacle happened there, the regime change. Then we have fostered our ties and warmed up with Maldives. The Foreign Secretary went to Nepal and Bhutan. And now we are seeing Indian Prime Minister going to Brunei. And Brunei, this is the first ever trip of an Indian Prime Minister on a bilateral visit to Brunei on the invite of the head of the state. And also, as you rightly mentioned, that India is also kind of not relying on just one partner for one of the technology or needs. Like we knew that for defense, India was always reliant on Russia. Then its reliance diversified. We have multiple partners. So in the same way, we are diversifying our relations as well in South Asia. And that's why Brunei is important. We are importing hydrocarbons from Brunei, and now in the near future, perhaps after this bilateral meeting of the Prime Minister with the head of state of Brunei, India is also looking to sort of import natural gas in the future, because India's energy needs will also increase with the passage of time, and in years to come, India will have to diversify its partners in needs. So Brunei could be one potential partner which is already providing us hydrocarbon. Also, India has close ties with Brunei when it comes to space technology. We have also installed, a couple of years ago, India had installed some satellite tracking technology there in Brunei. Besides that, in this particular trip, India will have bilateral talks and discussions on space technology, agriculture, food technology, a defense cooperation, a joint working group of both the countries over the defense issue will also be constituted in near future. So this visit, not just to Brunei, but even to Singapore, because Singapore, a team of union ministers had gone there just last month. So it's a follow-up by the Prime Minister, and many more deals and announcements could be made during this 2-day trip, 3-day trip of Prime Minister to Brunei as well as Singapore.
We will, of course, revert to you for regular updates during this two-nation tour. Thanks so much, as always, Ghazali, for joining us with the latest. We also have with us, live from Singapore at the moment, Girija Pande. Thank you so much, sir, for making time for us on the World 24/7. We are aware that where you are, Singapore is actually India's 6th largest trading partner. It's the largest in the ASEAN region. Whereas Brunei, sir, fairly has lowest trading figures with India. We are aware that officials have been trying to improve trading figures with both the countries, especially in terms of reducing tariffs. But are you hopeful of some significant steps in this direction during the Prime Minister's touchdown in both Brunei and Singapore?
I think you have to look at this visit more as a look east, part of the look east policy of India with ASEAN. So India has been trying to closely work with ASEAN. There are FTAs have been signed with ASEAN over the last 10, 15 years. There's a growth in relationship, trade relationship with all the ASEAN countries. Brunei is, of course, a new one in a sense that it is more oil and gas initially. But Singapore has been a very heart of India's ASEAN story where, we have large investments both sides and, of course, a very large trade. And then there is an ASEAN-India trade. ASEAN is the 3rd largest importer into India with nearly $87 billion last year. Of course, there is a net trade deficit with ASEAN, but huge investments coming through, nearly $25 billion of investments both ways. So this is a big story. A lot of Singaporean companies are in India, the big ones. I mean, there is as you know, investments in Airtel. There is an investment in Air India. Similarly, the Indian companies are here in large numbers, not only working in Singapore, but also accessing the Asia-Pacific and ASEAN market. So there is a lot happening. And it's a good time that the PM is revitalizing the ASEAN-India story. After all, this is India's backyard.
In terms of just Brunei, if we talk about the strategic significance, which you just briefly touched upon, it does hold strategic significance given its location in the Indo-Pacific region, sir. But do you think this visit will also seek to give more heft to the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, which India, Singapore and Brunei are part of?
Yes, I mean, Brunei is very much part of the ASEAN, very much close. It's a very oil-rich kingdom, as all of you know. And it's strategically located within the Asia-Pac region, especially in the South China Sea.
Yeah. And during this visit, we also know that the Prime Minister is going to be addressing many CEOs in Singapore. They'll get to hear India's growth story firsthand, as the MEA put it. But it also comes at a time when a new leader is in Singapore. In that sense, sir, would you say this visit will actually mark a resurrection of interest in Singapore's government towards India?
Well, Singapore, India have had relationship when the first free trade agreement India ever signed with anyone was with Singapore in 2005. And since then, growth has been going on. The political relationships have been very good. The defense relationships have been very good. And of course, the trade and investment relationship have been excellent. I mean, Singapore is one of the largest investors in India. And there is no doubt that every government that has come from Singapore or India have actually just added to that relationship. And therefore, this visit is very timely because we have a new Prime Minister in Singapore. And I think it will be good to have a leader meeting each other for the first time as the Prime Minister. And of course, he would be talking to a lot of CEOs who have already invested in. Singapore knows India quite well. And it's a reiteration of India's commitment to look east and strengthening relationships in trade and investment, because Singapore looks at trade and investments across the region.
Well, thank you so much, sir, as always, for making time for us and joining us. We will, of course, revert to you for updates when the Prime Minister wraps up this two-nation tour. The Indian side would want to engage with Mr. Wong, who has tried a completely different career trajectory, many would argue, than his predecessor. Many also argue that Mr. Wong is seen as a centrist or left of centre, despite Singapore being a free market. He has actually introduced a wave of reforms and policies that are aimed at the welfare of the common man, as opposed to just the elite.